Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Going to talk about the month of March, the astrological energies and shifts that are taking place, and of course the full moon in Virgo, which is approaching in the next few days. There is a lot to talk about. I was actually doing a fair bit of preparation for this presentation. I've got quite a few notes in front of me, actually. I don't know if I'll get through it all. It's been quite a cathartic type of experience for myself, actually, just sitting down and putting all this information together. And there's very specific reasons for that, because this full moon in Virgo is really quite profound, actually, from an esoteric level and from an exoteric level. And I'm going to bring in some esoteric astrology to this. And I'm also going to bring in a very important asteroid that's conjunct this full moon, which is Nemesis, the asteroid goddess Nemesis. Now, she doesn't have the best reputation necessarily, but as time has gone on, there's been a bit of a shift in the perception of her frequency and what she can bring up. So, look, the month of March is a huge month relative to energies really shifting. We have the true astrological new year, which is on the 21st of March, which is the equinox time. So it's a very, very powerful month from a spiritual level, whatever that may mean for you. For me, what that means is the alignment of the soul to the personality, really. That's in my heart and soul, and in my own understanding and in my own personal journey, to have a spiritual life and connection to things is to align my personality, my ego, with my soul, and to have that relationship working together on a day-to-day basis as consciously as I can. So if I was to phrase, what does spirituality mean for me? That's what it means. So we have the equinox, which means the sun enters Aries, right? The ingress of the sun into Aries, 0 degrees Aries. That's the true new year, actually. That's the true mark of spring, of new beginnings, new births. So it's highly relevant given everything we've been going on, everything that's been going on and that we have been going through. We could say from last year, with this process of Pluto in Capricorn closing and finishing a lot of things off, relative to the collective unconscious, relative to our own personal lives. And of course, Saturn in Capricorn, that journey the last 3 years where Saturn has been in Capricorn and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction has really brought about what appears to be crisis in the world. But don't forget, the word crisis in the Chinese language means opportunity, right? So the crisis that is coming up is for the new order of things to be birthed, to come through. We can't create a new order or new streams, new pathways, if we don't actually dismantle the old structures, right? So, Pluto has been taking us through this journey since 2008. And then the alignment of Saturn catching up to Pluto the last 3 years has been a really tough time, particularly for all the cardinal signs, right? So those who are Capricorn, Aries, Libra, and Cancer, okay? They're the 4 cardinal signs. So all you guys who belong to that group have been going through some very, very intense, deep personal crises, deep transformations, and I can only imagine what that has meant for each of you. So the month of March is huge because Saturn makes his first entrance, ingresses into the sign of Aquarius, and that happens virtually just after the equinox, just after the sun ingresses into Aries. So March is huge from that level, in terms of Saturn, who spends a significant amount of time in one sign, and this Saturn business is huge because Saturn has been with Pluto, the last 3 years, more or less. Well, the conjunction has been active for the last 18 months, but, Saturn's been working with that Pluto energy, resisting it, totally resisting it in so many ways. But we can see, even if we just look at the collective situations, we had the fires in Australia, as all of you are aware. Um, there was so much devastation about that. There was so much pain and loss and grieving um, that went on around that. And Ceres was obviously involved because Ceres was in Capricorn. I've already spoken about all that. Now we have the coronavirus matter coming up into our stream and field of experience, which I'm not going to focus on because I feel that whilst it's quite a serious matter, um, the way the media is handling it is to inject fear into people. Of course, that's their job. That's how they make money. Fear sells, sex sells, right? Violence sells. The dark forces, the dark astral forces, they sell. It's just how it is. The consciousness of us, all of us, gets drawn very easily to those spheres of life. It's much harder to establish a relationship, a connection, and raise your frequency to a higher state. It's much harder to even remain at that state because we just continuously get pulled back down into the so-called reality of this earth plane, this 3D reality. So we're always faced off. We have this interface, with Saturn, the harshness of reality, as it were, and then the transcendental planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which are always calling us to transcend, to elevate, to reach into our higher self, to transform, to release, to let go, to purge, to evolve, to individuate. The call is always there. Whether we respond to it or not is a different thing altogether. So March is a very important month from the point of view of a whole new astrological new year being birthed, which is going to be incredibly powerful because of what we've been through and what we're leaving behind. And this full moon in Virgo connects to this as well. Saturn, as I said, goes into Aquarius. Now, I'm not going to talk about Saturn in Aquarius in this presentation. I want to do a separate video for you guys on that because I just want to talk about Saturn in Aquarius and the impact of what that will be, first of all, collectively, and second of all, individually, because all the fixed signs, Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus, are all going to have a dose of Saturn over the next 3 years, right? So the cardinals have been through it, the cardinal signs, and now it's the turn of the fixed signs to go through it. So there's a very big shift in energy there from the cardinal energy to the fixed energy, okay? And that's going to be a collective experience and obviously a very personal experience for many. And I will do a separate video on that. Now, the very interesting thing, well, let's just start with the first week of March. Is quite an interesting week. We have Venus is ingressed into the sign of Taurus. Now, Venus goes retrograde this year. Okay, she hasn't been retrograde since 2018, where she had her retrograde cycle through the sign of Scorpio, and I had done a video about that when that was happening. It's worth maybe listening to that if you haven't heard it, because relative to what Venus means for you in your chart, where she's located, where Scorpio is located, that retrograde cycle can be very important for understanding the retrograde cycle we are about to go into relative to Venus. Now, she doesn't go retrograde until, where is it? The 14th of May. So we're going to essentially have Venus in the sign of Gemini for about 4 months, which is quite a long time, because from the time she ingresses into Gemini and when she goes through a whole retrograde cycle, and by the time she then leaves the sign of Gemini, it all basically happens. She goes into Gemini on the 4th of April, and she doesn't leave the sign of Gemini until the 7th of August. So that's quite a while of Venus in Gemini, which means a lot of different things. And again, I'm going to do a separate video for that because that deserves time and attention and focus just on that subject alone. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention that we have that going on this year as well in the next couple of months. But in terms of the first week of March, which is what we're in right now, Venus is ingressed into Taurus. And look, Venus in Taurus she's in her rulership, okay? Pardon me. Now, when a planet is in its rulership, in its domicile, it is at home. It is where it's most comfortable. It's its most natural expression. And Venus is a benefic planet as well. So benefic planets inherently do not bring harm, right? But when they are in a sign that they struggle with, there's going to be some challenges. There's no question about that. Venus in Taurus doesn't really have challenges as such. She's very dignified in this sign. The journey of Venus in Taurus can be very powerful for our own journey through getting back in touch with our body, our physical body. And that can be health. That can be health from the point of view of doing body work, whether that's exercise, whether that's nutrition, there's so many different streams of alternative and therapeutic practices relating to the physical body. But that's where Venus in Taurus takes us. She takes us right into the body, the senses of the body. Now, the other side to that coin is the component that connects to our inner resources and our inner values. So it's got to do with the internal value system that we have integrated into our consciousness from birth, more or less. So Venus in Taurus can be a really beautiful journey from the point of view of reflecting on our own internal value system. And that's a very important journey because you need to understand Venus in Taurus. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, right? So where is Taurus and Libra in the zodiac? What is the distance between them? The distance between them is an inconjunct. What does an inconjunct aspect speak to? It speaks to a readjustment process that goes on inside us internally. The other thing about the Taurus to the Libra is that because we're talking about one planet, Venus, correlating to Taurus and Libra, the Taurus component is our own internal value system, whether we are conscious of it or not, and how that internalized process of value that we have of ourselves really comes from the early mothering home environment that we were born into, how we were validated, how we experienced love and nurture and support from our primary caregivers. So whatever was established, from 0 to 7 years of age, let's say, that becomes your internalized value system, which correlates to your own self-worth. And relative to whatever that is for you, then gets projected into the 7th house, the other side of Venus, Libra, in terms of what it is you feel you need from another, Libra, and what you've missed out on or what wasn't given to you as such when you were growing up. You look for it in the other person, in Libra, in the partnership, in the relationship. It's very important to understand this connection between Taurus and Libra, right? So Taurus, Venus going into Taurus for us can be understood from that level in terms of really reflecting on our own internal value systems. How clear are we about those? What sort of things do we project onto relationships and other people in terms of what we think we need or what we're looking for in others? How does that speak back to our own personal experience as a young child and what we've integrated or assimilated into our consciousness that may need to be corrected or adjusted? So Venus in Taurus can help us connect to that process, that journey, if we work with it consciously, of course. Now, I'll speak about Venus going retrograde in Gemini, as I said, in another video. But just keep in mind over the next few weeks while Venus is in Taurus, these are some of the things that we can work through on a very personal level. Also, it's about connecting to art and beauty. The pleasurable components of life that give us a sense of pleasure and happiness. Venus rules happiness, Jupiter rules joy. And Venus in Taurus she's quite happy. That's her, that's a sign she rules. This week, however, in fact, as I speak, she's forming a conjunction to the planet Uranus because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. I'll bring up the chart in a moment so we can have a look at a few things. Now, I was having this moment just as I was getting ready to go to sleep last night, and I was just thinking about Venus forming this conjunction to Uranus. And the vision I had was interesting. I had this vision of Venus in Taurus would be maybe being in a nice sort of boat, if you like, but in a lake, right? That's really calm. There's no turbulence in the water. There's no turbulence in the elements, through the air and the weather and so on and so forth. There's just this beautiful day, sunlight. It's really tranquil. It's peaceful. You're just enjoying the surroundings. You're absorbing it. You're taking it all in, and then all of a sudden, the lake becomes this zone that you enter that would be similar to what's it called? Water rafting. When you go into those canoes and you go into these turbulent waters, which is really exciting and thrilling for some people, but terrifying for others. Nevertheless, it's a real rush, right? And you don't really have much control. In fact, you don't have any control really of what's going on. The waters are controlling everything, right? So that's the contrast of you're in this serene lake, Venus and Taurus, absorbing the beautiful surroundings, connecting with nature, feeling the elements, being at one with it. And then all of a sudden you get to this section where suddenly you're in these unpredictable waters, elements of nature. Things have just gone slightly off the radar and chaotic. That would be Venus joining up with Uranus, sudden disruption in that tranquil, peaceful environment that you were in. That's just a metaphor, right? That relates to a vision I had last night when I was thinking about Venus conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Now, relating that to a more practical level, if you like, in terms of our own life, we can see this process as just a few days where Venus is lines up with Uranus, where relative to our internal value system, Venus in Taurus, and the journey she's taking us through for the next few weeks, where we can process that, where we can look at that, where we can explore that and work with it in order to heal or to remove or to correct or to transform, right? Don't forget, Taurus is opposite Scorpio. So we're always drawing in the polarity. So even though we have Venus in Taurus, which is interesting, Venus is in Taurus, going to go retrograde in Gemini, and she was retrograde in Scorpio 2 years ago. So these things are all connected, right? So just lost my train of thought there. It'll come back to me. I'll just have to get back to it. Venus conjunct Uranus, that's right. So for a few days there, we can say that the Uranus impulse that it's like an electric impulse onto Venus. She gets a shock, right? Venus is a magnetic principle by her nature. She's a magnetic principle. She basically correlates to, amongst many other things, some of which I've explained. She also correlates to what we attract and how we attract it, magnetic principle function from a feminine perspective, right? She's a feminine archetype energy. So conjunct Uranus is that electrical impulse that can come through that might shock you or wake you up to seeing conditioned value systems that you may have integrated into your consciousness, into your life, story, narrative. And those little waves of shock that can come through over the next few days can be an opportunity to decondition, to maybe let go of a particular value, you know, that you've had, that you've thought was, it's an important value, it's what I learned, it's what I've been taught is the correct way, blah, 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 right? We're all conditioned from the consensus reality, and we're all conditioned from the family we're born into. It doesn't mean that conditioning pertaining to our values is right for us. And this is why, as we always grow and evolve and we're always becoming, it's our responsibility to check in with our own values and what we believe. It's not anybody else's duty or responsibility to say, hey, you know, your value sucks. It's like, what's that about? It doesn't even really matter what anybody else thinks. It's always going to come back to the true alignment of your authentic self. And that's what Uranus correlates to shooting off like a little electrical impulse into your being that helps you become more authentic. All right, so this is what the next few days can bring up relative to Venus and Uranus forming this conjunction. On the other hand, at a very external, mundane sort of level, if you like, it can be a sense of excitement in a particular connection, relationship that you are in, or are attracted towards a particular person. There can be something really unpredictable and exciting that comes out of some scenario in that way. In addition to that, if you're in a relationship already, this can spice things up, or it can actually create some sense of wanting to be free of that commitment. It just depends who you are and where you're at in your life. So these are some of the themes relative to Venus, Uranus. It's not an easy energy, but the only reason it would feel disruptive is because you are not able to step into the uncertainty of what Uranus brings. Because Uranus doesn't bring, you know, clarity, certainty, familiarity. You know, it brings uncertainty, things that you don't know about, that you don't know what you're stepping into. So have a think about that and see what that means to you. Now, let me just bring up the chart for the full moon. Just bear with me here because I've got a few things on my screen. Okay, so I'm really excited to talk about this full moon. There is, for me, when I was reflecting on this, a light bulb sort of just went off in my head, because when you think about where we've been relative to the world crises, really, in terms of the decaying and deconstruction of things, which results in the external levels as crises, as the shit hitting the fan, if I can put it like that. We are all walking through our own personal evolutionary path, but we are also a part of the collective evolution. So we are all experiencing and have been experiencing this process of decay out of our life. That's the Pluto in Capricorn. That basically correlates to old paternal structures that no longer serve in our collective evolutionary journey proceeding forward, and likewise in our own individual journey. So relative to all of that, if you look at this full moon in Virgo, it's a very powerful full moon. I mean, full moons, for a start, are always a very powerful cosmic frequency and energy that we are all subject to. We all feel it. You know, the statistics show that in psychiatric hospitals, for example, and the street crime and things like that, all those streams are highly escalated when there's a full moon, which is every month. That study was done years and years and years ago, so it's not a revelation. But I'm just simply reminding us of how the full moon truly does activate a very powerful heightened frequency within our own body. Think about it. The moon controls the tides in the ocean, as does the sun. And the moon correlates to the physical body from the point of view of it being like a container. It holds all the fluids, it holds everything together. Not only what's about this lifetime, but all the lifetimes that you've lived. The moon correlates to the past, always. And there's a lot of unfinished business and content in the unconscious components within us, which also correlates to the moon. The moon's very unconscious. It's a subconscious energy. It's not subjective, it's not objective. Pardon me, it's subjective, not objective. It's unconscious and subconscious. It takes us in and under, and it correlates to past. So the full moon in Virgo, first of all, let's just talk a little bit about the moon in Virgo itself, and then I'll talk about the aspects to it, right? The full moon in Virgo is ruled by Mercury, okay? And you can see here on this day, which in the southern hemisphere, the full moon is on the 10th. Now, for others, it will be on the 9th, just depends where you are on the planet. 9th and 10th, let's say, okay? Mercury rules this full moon, and Mercury is stationary direct on this day. That's a very interesting correlation, right? And a very interesting point, particularly because Mercury rules the full moon sign. That's very helpful for us, actually, because Mercury being back in Aquarius, because it started out in Pisces, right, and went retrograde right back into Aquarius, which is what we're seeing here. So something unfinished, right, that you may have been considering and thinking about early February, like virtually the beginning of February, during this full moon might become very clear to you, or you might just find some answers to unanswered questions that you had from back then, or you may just follow up on things that you sort of put a stop to, or put a pause to, or shifted your attention. So that's just basic external sort of day-to-day kind of stuff that I'm referring to there. But it is important because Mercury rules this full moon, and Mercury is stationary direct. So the stationary direct is allowing us to move forward, in other words, okay? And in Aquarius, it adds that element of objectivity. We can have clear awareness and objective foresight relative to our own personal situation. Now, here's what I really want to focus on. In esoteric astrology, Virgo, its esoteric ruler is the moon, whereas in exoteric astrology, Mercury rules Virgo, right? Now, in esoteric astrology, the moon rules Virgo. And it's very challenging, perhaps, to grasp your left brain thought process around that, which I completely understand, because esoteric astrology operates from a very different level. And the one thing that you need to completely at least be open to is when you are dealing with your chart from an esoteric level, what you are doing is making a conscious decision to align your soul and personality so they are integrated and they are working together. And that basically means that you understand that it's not just about you. This life purpose and life journey, it's not just about you. That's the ego and the personality that always comes back to that need, that thought, that desire, whatever. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just simply saying that if you are on the path of individuating, becoming more authentic, that path is about aligning with the divine will. If you're on a path where it's just about your own personal will, Mars, then you're just doing your own thing from that personal level. If you're trying to align the divine will and your highest will, divine will, Neptune, your highest will, Pluto, the soul, then you're walking a very different path to an individual who's operating from their own personal desires and personal will. Mars and the Sun too. The personal planets. So the moon rules Virgo in esoteric astrology. And by the way, I've said this before, but you may not have heard it. One of the reasons why moon in Virgo people can have the ability to have psychic type abilities, if you like, clairvoyant, clairaudient, a really, really, really strong sixth sense, intuitive faculty. You normally wouldn't necessarily think that about Virgo, but because the moon is the esoteric ruler of Virgo, it seems to have that influence on an esoteric level. Now, I'd like to read a couple of things, if I may, and this is relative to esoteric astrology, the full moon being in Virgo, and the moon being the ruler of Virgo from an esoteric level. And these are just some general comments about the esoteric ruler of Virgo, which is the moon, and how we can understand it, okay, from an esoteric level. The vast majority of humanity is still quite fully focused on the life of the personality. Attachments to one's biological karma, instinctual emotional responsiveness patterns of early family conditioning and conformist sociological behavior, in brackets, all lunar influenced, are still very strongly integrated into the mass consciousness, Cancer, in brackets. From the soul-centered esoteric perspective, the moon has no essential life value. Now, I know that sounds a bit weird, but just bear with me as I continue to read. It is a storehouse for the past, the moon is, that is, especially the past which is characterized by outworn and discarded astral images and desires. Although our attunement with the essential wholeness of life is steadily growing, a number of us are still struggling with the relationship between our soul awareness and our involvement with our physical, mental, and especially our emotional lives. This is the cross that we bear, is it not? And it is this cross and the sacrifices and reorientations that it requires which lead us more assuredly to a place of greater consciousness. As we move towards the fixed cross, we are moving through the illusion of the moon, trying to perceive beyond the maya of preconditional forms of the body, mind, and emotions, and into the reality that is love, wisdom, which is ray 2. Love, wisdom correlates to ray number 2, which is Sun, Jupiter, as in the rulership planets for that. So in esoteric astrology, we're working with a system of 7 rays, okay? And each ray correlates to specific planets and specific zodiac signs. Now, let me just read a couple more comments. When an individual has learnt how to detach himself from the magnetism of his lunar past, one of the 3 planets can be substituted for the moon's placement and traditional function in the natal chart. Now, this is going quite deep, I know, but I still want to offer it for those, because I know I have some viewers that really love esoteric astrology, who read about it, who are interested in learning about it, and so forth. Those of you that are not interested, just tune out for a minute. But then again, you may get something out of this, so please be open as best you can. Okay. Now here it just made a comment about when we learn how to work with that lunar energy by relieving the past astral images that we have stored in our subconscious memory, which connect to the moon. Even in evolutionary astrology, you're working with the moon, the moon's nodes, and Pluto, which all show you a narrative and a story and a picture of past. The moon is always the past, whether it's in exoteric astrology or esoteric astrology. It just has a different rulership in esoteric and in exoteric, right? Okay, so once we're able to transcend and release the past that resides in our subconscious, we can actually activate these other higher frequencies, and I'll tell you what they are. So the moon is said then, the moon is then said to veil that planet's effects. When a person is leaving the mutable cross, now there's an incredibly large component in esoteric astrology which speaks to and correlates to the fixed cross, the mutable cross, and the cardinal cross, right? Which obviously correlates to the cardinal signs, fixed signs, and mutable signs. And those 3 crosses have tremendous significance in esoteric astrology, from a personal level and absolutely from a collective level. But that's a huge subject, and that would be an entire course to unpack, all right? So obviously I'm not going to go there now, but I just wanted to explain to you what it refers to when it refers to a fixed cross or a mutable cross, etc. So I'll start that comment again. When a person is leaving the mutable cross and is about to mount the fixed cross, the effects of Vulcan are very noticeable. Remember, Vulcan is a point in the chart that is always, you can see it here in this chart, right? See it at 16 degrees of Pisces, that's Vulcan, that red arrow pointing down, right? It's conjunct the sun, it's also conjunct Neptune. The fact that it's conjunct Neptune here is very, very important, very interesting, and I'll make a comment about that in a minute. But Vulcan in mythology was like this underground man. He was one of the gods, as it were, but he wasn't like all the other gods, which is what makes him quite distinctive from the rest of the gods in Mount Olympus. He he worked behind the scenes on his own. He was a blacksmith, which really means that he was working alchemically. So Vulcan speaks to, and Vulcan is a very powerful symbol in esoteric astrology. And the reason for that is because in esoteric astrology, what we're doing is working consciously with on our path with the alignment of the soul and the personality. That alignment is our life's work. So Vulcan in esoteric astrology is a part of that work, because Vulcan is that deep inner work we do on ourselves behind the scenes. So just going back to these comments here. Vulcan rules that process which breaks the chains to form. As the blacksmith of the gods, Vulcan forges new tools for the expression of consciousness. Past patterns of behavior are dissolved in favor of a growing awareness, which leads ultimately to detachment from the desires and compulsion of form. When the moon veils Uranus, the individual becomes a vehicle for the birthing of new archetypes of human consciousness. One is freed from the past. Uranus, the revolutionary, has seen to that. A new focus for form, one more appropriate to the current evolutionary stage of life, appears when the energies or Uranus are substituted for the position of the moon in the natal chart. The individual consciously acts as part of a group effort working to bring in the new archetypes for the betterment of humanity. So the nature of soul-centered esoteric energies of the planets does not negate the personality-centered exoteric indicatives, right? So in other words, we're not trying to say that exoteric astrology should be discarded or not considered or not worked with, because we are in a three-dimensional space and we are in the physical. So we have to work with the exoteric, but we also need to integrate the esoteric. So it's not that one is better than the other. They are just operating from different streams. Okay, so a blending is taking place, one which gives rise to an blending, meaning exoteric, esoteric, in other words, soul, personality. A blending is taking place, one which gives rise to an ever-increasing inclusivity. The nature of the interrelationships between the energies, forces, and ray qualities, forces and ray qualities of the planets and signs reveals to us these patterns of unfoldment and their directions. The soul-centered individual has neither forgotten or abandoned the past. That's a very important point, which just reiterates what I was saying a minute ago, where we don't disregard exoteric personality astrology, right? So, and just one final comment, the effects of the moon and its sign placement as we understand them to be from the angle of personality-centered and psychologically orientated astrology are still valid in this present and in this respect. But there are other more refined or highly evolved influences with the moon veils. These esoteric inferences and effects dominate and supersede the earlier lunar-based ones in the consciousness of the soul-centered individual. You can see how vastly different esoteric astrology understands and looks at things. And you can also see then how much power this full moon in Virgo really holds for us, because we have a couple of different things going on. We have the full moon in Virgo, which just in Virgo alone is speaking to the process and journey relative to our own self-improvement. You know, this is a really powerful full moon, just to keep things, or go back to some simple external practical understanding of this full moon. You know, if you've been wanting to develop a new health regime for yourself, it's mind-body connection. Virgo, 6th house, mind-body connection. Mind, because it's ruled by Mercury. Virgo is ruled by Mercury in exoteric astrology, which is the mind. And the body component is the fact that Virgo correlates to our well-being in general, but our health, you know, our physical health. And Virgo correlates to, you know, the digestive system in the body. And it is that part in the body that correlates to Virgo. So if you understand anything about medical astrology, Aries rules the head, right? Taurus rules the throat. Gemini rules the hands, shoulders, hands. Cancer rules the breasts. Leo rules the heart. Virgo rules the intestines, digestive system, and so on and so forth. And we end up with Pisces connecting to the feet, right? So the entire zodiac is mapped out in the physical body. So that part of Virgo in the physical body relative to the parts of the internal bits and pieces, organs and whatnot that it correlates to, is it's Virgo in our body that discerns and discriminates the junk that needs to be detoxified and released out of your body. You don't say to your body, hey, I want you to get rid of that, or get rid of this, or fix this, or do that, or whatever. I mean, you may be, you know, working on some physical ailment or some other type of health matter that you're working through, or whatever. That's a different thing. I'm just talking about what the body naturally does without you asking it to do it, in the same way that you go to sleep. So Virgo correlates to discriminating, discerning what needs to be cleared out, purified, cleansed, and detoxified. So this full moon speaks very, very strongly to the health type matters and anything we want to improve in our life on that level. Virgo correlates to yoga. If anything rules the wisdom and practice of yoga, it's Virgo, 100%. So you may want to start practicing yoga. Now, there are many different styles of yoga. You know, you need to explore what that looks like for you, or what speaks to you about that. I practice yoga. I used to teach it as well. I practice meditation every night. These are Virgo things. And I don't have a strong Virgo house in my chart. I don't have anything in my 6th house. But the moon rules my 6th house, and the moon's in my 1st house, which is the physical body. So there's a connection. So reorganizing your life when it comes to health and nutrition, mind-body connection, things that you really want to improve on. And to take it a step further, it's also about service to the larger whole, not just for yourself, because the 6th house, think about it like this: from Aries to Leo, Aries is birth, and the ego is born, right? And it's developed from Aries to Leo. So at Leo, if we looked at a pyramid, right, Leo would have the personality and ego on the top of the pyramid because it's fully developed. fully grown, developed, individuated from that Leo level, right? A complete sense of self, a complete sense of your own character and who you are, Leo. When we get to Virgo, which is where we are in this full moon, if we still keep the analogy of the pyramid, what Virgo does is it flips that ego that Leo had on the top of the pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid. Why does it do that? Because it's trying to let us know that, yeah, we've developed this incredible sense of self, identity, personality, character, ego, all of that, Aries to Leo. And now we need to take a step back and actually examine where it is that we need to further develop on ourselves. And we can't do it if we just stay in Leo. In Leo, we just want to have fun. We don't want to work. Work is Virgo. That's where we do the work. So this full moon speaks to these sorts of themes in our lives. It's about, first of all, being very realistic as well about where we stand at the moment relative to our own personal journey. And what are the things that we really need to work on and improve on in our life for our own mental and emotional and physical well-being and health, so that we can be a more powerful advocate or vessel, vehicle for contributing to the larger whole. We can't contribute to the larger whole if we're not taking care of ourselves and not addressing our own stuff. So Virgo gets us to look at those details of things. Takes that grandiose ego, puts it down at the bottom of the pyramid and says, okay, let's get realistic about where we're at with our own personal journey of self-improvement. So we have the esoteric component, which is a reminder of the releasing of subconscious past material and aligning ourselves with a divine will, our own highest will, soul personality alignment. Then we have the health, nutrition, mind-body connection level relative to this full moon. And also, of course, the full moon is always opposite the sun. Now look at the sun in this chart and you can see Neptune is right there, isn't it? That's a very interesting aspect, okay, because the full moon in this case is what is illuminating what's before us or what we're looking at. And the Virgo component, which is a yin energy, a mental energy, and it takes us inside through a introspective process of analysis. What's that introspective analysis about? It's about checking out where you need to work on yourself. There's none of us at any point in our life could say that I've got nothing more to do relative to working on myself or my path. That wouldn't be true for anybody, in my opinion. So it's Virgo's humility. A Virgo is a sign of humility, right? It's humble and it's able to step back and have a look at its imperfections and say, okay, this is the area that I really recognize that really needs improvement in my life. And this is where I'm going to apply my discipline, because Virgo is about discipline, right? So again, creating a particular exercise regime could be really powerful at this time for you. Diet, starting to practice yoga, meditation, all those things are very, very important. A refocus on certain tasks that you've maybe started or had in place, or, just sort of put on the back burner. This is a time to get organized, or as I like to say, Virgonized. When I'm organizing things in my house or in my life, I always use the term I'm Virgonizing, which I think is pretty funny. I think it's funny anyway. I've been using that word for years. So yeah, with Virgo, this Virgo full moon, it's really about getting realistic about who we are, where we are, what we need to work on, what we have worked on relative to the bigger picture stuff as well. And look, the Sun Neptune brings in the component of we're sort of interfacing, if you like. Here's our dreams, ideals, Neptune, and here's the reality of where we stand. And an opposition, which is what we have here, Sun opposite Moon, which is what creates a full moon, is always about awareness. It's about having more clarity and insight and being aware of my personal circumstances, whatever they may be. So this is what we're sort of interfacing with this full moon. It's like we get this view, this glimpse into, okay, here's my dreams and ideals, and here's the reality. How can I bring these closer together? What do I need to do? What work, Virgo, do I need to do to have these ideals take a closer step into my field of experience? What is the work that I need to do on myself? And this full moon is also, Jupiter and Pluto are sextile the Sun, and Jupiter and Pluto are trine the Moon. So we have this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction building up, which I've done a video for. If you just want to hear about that conjunction, just look for the video that's titled Pluto-Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn, because that's one big powerhouse conjunction. It's the ability to restore and regenerate your faith. If you've been going through a really difficult process or journey, whether it's in the last week, month, year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever it is, this Pluto-Jupiter conjunction has the capacity and ability to restore and regenerate your own sense of faith about life and yourself. And here it is speaking to this full moon, trine the full moon, and sextile the Sun. So this full moon energy holds or is being held in support of Pluto and Jupiter. Pluto is always about transformation, always. So the transformational work, Virgo, that we are needing to do is supported by Pluto during this full moon. Now, I'm not saying on the full moon you're going to transform your life. What I am saying, though, is that if you create some very specific intentions or become very clear, aware about the area that you're wanting to improve on in your life, then this full moon can activate that path for you, because Pluto, the agent of transformation, the soul's desires, is supporting by forming a trine to this full moon. And Jupiter is a benefic planet. Now, Jupiter is not in his strongest in Capricorn, he's in fall. So, it would have been great if it was Jupiter in Pisces or Sag, but it's not. It is what it is. So we take what's there, or we receive actually what's there. And a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, regardless of the sign, is a very, very powerful force of energy to help us transform our own faith about our life and ourselves. And here it is coming into the full moon, sextile the sun, trine the moon. It's incredibly powerful. Okay, so you can see here that this is the Venus-Uranus conjunction, which started, well, let's have a look, just so we can, I'm just going to go back. So today for me is the 6th of March. For most of you, it's probably the 5th. Okay. Now, you can see here, I've gone back to the 8th of March, and Venus is at 2 degrees and 51 minutes of Taurus, absolutely conjunct Uranus. It's an applying conjunction, but I want to take it back one more day. So I would say that from the 6th of March, this conjunction starts to be in effect because it's an applying conjunction. Venus is applying, she's moving towards Uranus. So from the 6th of March to, approximately there, 6th of March to 10th of March, so 3-4 days, let's say, we have this Venus-Uranus activation, and I spoke about that at the beginning of this presentation, so I'm not going to repeat what I said. Then we have the full moon on the 9th and 10th of March. I've obviously spoken about what that's going to correlate to. I've spoken about Venus in Taurus for you guys. I've spoken about the aspects to the full moon and the tremendous support this full moon has, actually. I've spoken about the health components and the work that we need to do on ourselves, and the opportunity that we actually have to recognize and be realistic and truthful with this full moon. That this full moon is going to highlight the reality and what we can do about it. And we can do something because Pluto and Jupiter trine this full moon. That journey of self-improvement relative to the full moon in Virgo can also correlate to the esoteric level, which is about my personal, not saying me, but I'm just speaking for all of us, my personal journey of self-improvement in the form of aligning myself to my soul, aligning my personality to my soul. That's a journey. That's a process of improving, isn't it? What else? I'm going to mention Nemesis in a second. Now, 1st of April, we have a Sun-Saturn conjunction, a Sun-Mars conjunction in Aquarius. It's very interesting, but I'll leave that for the month of April. So we have Mercury going direct just after this full moon. It's stationary direct on the full moon in Aquarius, giving us a sense of objectivity and clarity. As we proceed forward, okay, this is really powerful. So just before the equinox, 21st of March, the true birth of the new year, look at the lineup. Mars in Capricorn, Pallas Athena in Capricorn, Jupiter in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn, Moon in Capricorn, Saturn right at the end of Capricorn. That's, yeah, that's a really incredibly powerful stellium. Let's just see. and you know, the moon catching up there is it's bringing that into uh, an everyday sort of focus, if you like, okay? Because the moon correlates to our domestic life. You know, it's our home life, our domestic life, our everyday life. It's our bodily rhythms. It's how we sleep, you know, how we wake up. It's all that sort of stuff. So the moon catches up to all these other planets in Capricorn, really tuning us in other words, to this closing energy of Capricorn in all these planets. It's like a massive, you know, build-up of this. It's like this massive mountain, and there's just this build-up of all the gods, right? And they're all up there in Capricorn doing their thing, right? And it is a closing off thing. It's like they're standing on the top of the mountain, and they're kind of looking out, right? And they're looking at, what's the work that we've done here? Not from just a personal level, but from a collective level. Now, the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, which lines up at around about that day, but it's exact on the 20th of March. So you can see here the sun is still in Pisces and ingresses into Aries, should be the next day. There, okay? So 21st of March, which is the true new year, sun 0 degrees Aries. It is this point here, this critical point, 0 degrees of Aries, and the other cardinal points as well, that correlates to the tropical zodiac, right, that we're working with. This tropical zodiac that we are working with relative to exoteric astrology is because of the sun's ingress into Aries, into Libra, into Capricorn, the cardinal signs, in other words. And this is the beginning point of this cardinal energy relative to the sun's journey. So it's a whole brand new solar year, if you like, for us collectively, sun into Aries, right? But just going back, this conjunction between Jupiter and Mars is a very powerful energy, just that on its own. And that's going to be in effect, you know, from the 19th to the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and you could even say 23rd. So for about 3-4 days there, we have a really powerful energy being formed by Mars and Jupiter. Now, Mars is doing really well on his own anyway, because he's in Capricorn and he's exalted there. So Mars works really well in Capricorn for a couple of reasons relative to traditional astrology. Because Mars's nature is so hot and fiery, hot-headed, right? The Capricorn, which is yin, feminine, inner, it calms and soothes that Mars down. So all the power that Mars has, which it has a lot of power, which correlates to our own personal desires, when it's in Capricorn, it's able to get real and practical about this, about its own desires and what it really wants to actualize and activate in its life, right? And then we have Jupiter, which, as I said, in Capricorn is not the best place for it, but it's a benefic. And Jupiter aligns with Mars. So Mars is going to benefit from Jupiter. Jupiter is not going to benefit from Mars. So we have Mars in this earth sign, Capricorn, which is about structure and stability, and perhaps even recreating a new structure, because we are doing that on a collective level. We are doing that here in Australia with all the fires that have happened. The earth has, she's replenishing herself. She purged out what she needed. And then we have this coronavirus, which is, the word that I want to use, or the thing that I want to associate with it, is Neptune at the moment. It truly correlates to Pluto, though, because Pluto correlates to viruses. A virus comes from Pluto, all right? But the Neptune component at the moment, from the collective standpoint, is that no one knows what the fuck is going on with it and how we're going to deal with it. There's no what's it called? There's no I've just forgotten the name. Anyway, it'll come back to me. So we're in a space collectively where we're dealing with this virus that's virtually reached every country, and that there has been fatalities already. And there's no way of dealing with it at the moment. They don't know how to deal with it. It is true, though, that more people, until yesterday, there was an announcement yesterday, more people die of influenza, the flu, every year. And that's not spoken about. That's, I mean, you just get the, the wave of the consensus reality of, sort of injecting fear into people every winter. You've got to get the flu shot. You've got to get the flu shot. I've never had a flu shot in my life, and I never will. That's my choice, but I'm just saying I haven't, and I'm still alive. So just because you have a flu shot, it doesn't mean that you won't die of the flu or influenza. I don't think, anyway. And if it's your time to go, you're going to go anyway. So yeah. Now the corona thing, it's very Neptune in the sense of we don't know where it's actually really come from. There's so many conspiracy theories about it, and I don't think delving into and absorbing those conspiracy theories is going to be particularly helpful. And this comes back to the full moon in Virgo, okay? What is going to be helpful, though, is, of course, we need to take precaution. Of course, we need to be more mindful and more careful with certain things that we are doing when we are outside of our home environment. But from a Virgo level, again, full moon Virgo, if we can create a healthier lifestyle for ourselves, in other words, have a stronger immune system by having better quality sleep, better quality food, meditation, physical exercise. And I said diet, didn't I? Did I say diet? If I didn't, I'll say it now. Diet, food, what we eat. These are basic things that we've known for a very long time. But to consciously work on these things, Virgo, work on it, we can create a healthier immune system, for example. Lack of sleep, shit food, no exercise, and no spiritual practices such as even meditation, it does catch up on us. It does catch up on us. And not only that, but even if it doesn't catch up on you because, you've lived a life on edge where you haven't really worried about any of that stuff, that's fine. But what is the quality of your life like without, implementing, sustaining yourself and nurturing yourself and the body and the mind and the heart and the soul? If we're not watering those gardens and we're not feeding them, then how can we expect the quality of the lifestyle that we live to be at a level that produces experiences that can take us into a better state of mind, a better emotional place of emotional equilibrium, or a sense of soul connection, understanding life from those deeper layers and levels, meaning getting out of the left brain and understanding that there's a, you know, there's a whole cosmological uh, experience that is beyond what our left linear brain will ever be able to understand or conceive of. So then we activate right brain intuition. Yeah, something to think about, isn't it, really? For all of us, I think. So this lineup of the Mars Jupiter, this is a very powerful conjunction, and I think um, if I talk about it from the exoteric level, then it really correlates to your personal conscious desires and goals, and the sense of optimism and confidence that you could feel about those during these days when Mars and Jupiter line up. Enormous confidence can come through. It could just be that push, as it were, that you've been waiting for to give you that courage to take that next step towards a particular project. On the esoteric level, that Mars Jupiter, because it's in the sign of Capricorn, it has very much to do with our own personal initiation. And here we can apply the personal will, Mars, into our path of initiation. Initiation to what? To whatever it is you need to initiate at this point of your journey and path relative to the alignment of the soul and the personality. So have a think about that. Okay, and I'll just finally finish up with the asteroid Nemesis, which is conjunct this full moon. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just want to finish it up with this. I think this is significant because it's Nemesis asteroid 128, for those of you that want to know the exact description. And she is at 18 degrees and 55 minutes of Virgo during the full moon. So let's just go. Okay, so there's the full moon. It's at 19 of Virgo, and Nemesis is at virtually 19. She's 5 minutes off being 19. So she's right on that full moon. And she is the restorer of cosmic order. How beautiful and fitting, really, is that relative to this full moon? Because with a Virgo full moon, we're sort of working with Virgo Pisces, chaos, order, and we are trying to find the balance within that polarity, Virgo Pisces. On the other hand, whilst Pisces can correlate to chaos, and the only reason it correlates to chaos is because when we project the Pisces archetype through the ego and the personality, it's distorted through the glamour side of Neptune, if you like, or Pisces, right? And it's the, desire to escape reality, living in a dreamland, all that sort of stuff, right? It's like a chaos in your own mind, as it were, just relative to the dream or illusion you've created in your own mind about your life. And the Virgo gets us to check things out from a really realistic level and stop, just staying into the escapism mode of Pisces, Sun Neptune conjunction. The Sun Neptune conjunction at the highest level, of course, has got to do with the ultimate source, truth, creation to all things, filtering into our consciousness so that we can activate more truth. But are we all operating at that level? I don't know. I can only speak for myself. So we have that edge here with that full moon, the Pisces component, which can be chaos, can also be just our ideals or our ideals that come crashing down, sense of disillusionment, because the full moon in Virgo lights up the reality of what it is we really need to work on. But we are getting help from the cosmic forces, Jupiter, Pluto, trine the moon, sextile the sun. There is, Jupiter is the greater benefic, and Pluto is the most powerful planet relative to our own transformation and evolution. And you've got these two big guns, as I like to call them, trine and sextile this full moon. You've got to step into that frequency and make the most of this. There's a lot to be gained. Okay, back to Nemesis. So she correlates to being the restorer of cosmic energy. Now, I think that's interesting because of the absolute chaos we are in at the moment relative to this coronavirus. So you could say her presence with this full moon, she's restoring some cosmic order that we don't even understand. We have all these perceptions or judgments or ideas about what this coronavirus is about. But in truth, there's something very deep and hidden about this because it's ruled by Pluto. And Pluto rules what's deep and hidden, what's unconscious. So all I'm saying is that the Nemesis is, we just have to trust that there's been something restored here from a much higher cosmological order of things that we do not have the specific details to, and that we have to just trust. Neptune, Pisces, we have to trust. So she was the goddess of due enactment, a karmic equalizer who ensured that no one had too much good fortune, but paid appropriately for their misdeeds, which is why she's referred to as the restorer of cosmic energy. She's basically trying to bring in the balance of where things are extremely out of balance at the moment on that collective level. And the moon correlates to the people, the popularity of people. That's the moon's domain. Here we have the full moon in Virgo showing us, the work that we really need to do. And Nemesis is just really restoring some cosmological order of balance in things. And that's going to be highly activated during this full moon. So she's actually assisting really in that way. She can correlate to issues around assigning blame, scapegoating, or finding fault. Be aware of that because Virgo itself is an archetype, because its nature is such that it's very critical. It has to be critical, otherwise how can it correct and improve on things? It has to be critical. But when that Virgo is operating in a way that's, how can I say, perhaps unconscious or in a way that's not really balanced or aligned, it can be just that really judgmental, harsh, critical person. And adding Nemesis into the picture, because she can correlate to blame and scapegoating and finding fault, well, it's very similar to Virgo when Virgo's operating in that really negative sort of way, right? So we've just got to be careful that we're not, projecting blame onto others for our own life circumstances. Even though there may be a situation or a person in your life that has, in your mind, wronged you. The minute we blame another person for how we feel, we've immediately disempowered ourselves. We've given over the power to the other person to decide that we are going to feel like shit because that person did that to me. there goes your power. Boom, say bye-bye. So just think about that, you know, blame, criticism, scapegoating, finding fault, all that shit is so unhealthy. And it doesn't actually empower you. It places you more in a victim type mode. And that's not empowering at all. So just be aware of that if it comes up for you. Okay, there's heaps more that I want to share, but they will be left for the month of April. I might come in if I have time to talk about Saturn in Aquarius this month. I'll see how I go because um, I've got a very busy schedule and I'm doing my best to attend to everybody. And it's really challenging. Yeah, it's a lot of energy, but I love it. That's why I'm here. So, sending you all much love and blessings, as I always say underneath all my videos and all my posts, and I mean that from my heart every time I say it. I hope that this presentation has given you some insight and has inspired you in a way that's right for you at the moment. Thanks again for listening and engaging and connecting, and thank you for all your comments that I know you will leave below and all questions. And just thanks again for giving me your time, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Much love and blessings. Thanks. Bye.